Many of you told me that the first mock test video I made was really helpful, so I wanted to make a second one. What I discovered as I was making this one, though, was that Duolingo was giving me the same questions that I saw before because I was getting every question correct. So in order to get different questions, I had to intentionally get some questions wrong. So how this mock test is going to work is I will leave some questions blank and give you the opportunity to find the correct answer. So I put all those questions in the description, but I would encourage you to follow along, write down your answers as we go, and then I want you to comment on this video with your answers, and I'll let you know which ones you got correct and incorrect. So let's go ahead and start the mock test. The mock test, like the real test, always starts with read and select questions. So you will be given a word and you have to say whether it's a real English word or not. Chance. No, not a real English word. Ironically. Yes. Substir. No. Contrish. No. Retricker. No. Assurity. No. Ocoment. Is that a real English word? Detached. Yes. Orientation. Yes. Tenning. No. Deprivation. Is that a real English word? Stressively. No. Serenity. Yes. Selective. Yes. Completely. No. Reassure. Is that a real English word? Sanction. Yes. Universal. Yes. Great. Once you answer all the read and select questions, then you will move on to the fill in the blanks questions. You'll be given a sentence. One word in the sentence will be missing letters. You have to fill in those missing letters. So you should always read the whole sentence. So in a blank, lay out the positions and sizes of elements on a web page. Do not change. So this is going to be fixed. So I have a whole lesson on fill in the blanks. You can check it out here. But that's the correct answer. The cathedral is blank, sound, and has managed to survive numerous earthquakes over centuries. Okay. The correct answer here is structurally sound. I find the library to be the most blank place to focus on my studies. Peaceful. We want a peaceful place when we are studying, a quiet place. They are trying to blank their children's creativity from an early age. Foster their children's creativity from an early age. This means develop. Scientists measure the blank of ice sheets to assess the impact of global warming. I want you to try to get this answer. So what is the incomplete word here? The two rivers flowing from different directions would eventually blank at the mouth of the ocean. Converge. This means come together. So two rivers, they're from different directions, but eventually they come together at the ocean. Aren't all government buildings supposed to be blank accessible to all? This one is publicly. Okay, so that means open to the public, open to anybody to go in. Their findings were long and blank. perfect for playing the piano. Sorry, their fingers were long and blank, perfect for playing the piano. Answer here would be slender, thin. The impact of blank as a force that undermines social cohesion is counteracted by acts of kindness. This one is very difficult. But the correct answer is going to be wickedness. So I knew this because counteracted by acts of kindness, I needed something that is the opposite of kindness, which is wickedness or evil. Great. All right, so now we move on to reading complete, listen and type, and read aloud in the mixed language skills section number 3. So those 3 question types are going to be mixed together in a random order.
Where did you splash them?
Where did you splash them? So the key thing with this one is it's a question. So you need to end with a question mark. All right, punctuation is important for these. So the strategy I recommend for listen and type, the first listen happens automatically, so you need to be attentive. Try to type as much as you can from what you hear. Use the second listen to pay attention to specific parts that you didn't catch or that you're unsure of. Fill in those. Then use the third listen to proofread your response. All right, so let's use the second listen.
Where did you splash them?
Okay, where did you splash them? I didn't have any areas I wasn't confident about. But if I did, that's what I would have paid attention to. And then the third listen I used to proofread my response.
Where did you splash them?
There you go. Then you can be very confident that you have the correct answer. All right, with these, I want you to listen to how I read these out loud. It's different than how I talk normally. All the necessary information regarding format and structure has already been provided.
It takes years of intensive study and training to become a medical doctor.
It takes years of intense training and study to become a medical doctor. All right, I think he said intense, but he may have said intensive. So this is what I'm going to listen for in my second listen.
It takes years of intensive study and training to become a medical doctor.
Okay, so intensive training. He did not say intense, he said intensive. All right, let's use the third listen to proofread.
It takes years of intensive study and training to become a medical doctor.
Okay, and I saw that I mixed up the order of these 2 words, all right? Takes years of intensive study and training to become a medical doctor. All right, this is the reading complete question. It looks similar to fill in the blanks. You need to fill in missing letters from words. However, reading complete is more difficult because you have many words that are missing letters and they are in the same sentence, which means in some sentences you can see you have more missing letters than you are given letters. So you really have to work hard to figure out what all of those incomplete words are. For reading complete, you will always have a title and you will always be given the first sentence and the last sentence. So whenever you come to one of these, you should start by reading the title and the first and last sentences. That gives you very useful information or context about what the passage is about. And that will help you figure out what the incomplete words are. So in this case, the definition of ecotourism. So we're talking about ecotourism and what it is. The word ecotourism comes from a combination of the words ecology and tourism, and it refers to responsible travel that conserves the environment and supports positive relationships with the local community. Overall, ecotourism follows the principles of protecting the environment, minimizing impacts on that environment, and raising cultural awareness. All right, let's now try to get these incomplete words. Ecotourism can include activities such as hiking, camping, and wildlife photography. It may involve travel to a particular region, such as a rainforest, for, I'll come back to this word, or study. So generally what I recommend is read through the passage and see what answers appear to you. With these, the easy questions will appear, or the easy words will appear to you automatically. Your brain will give you the answer. Fill those in. Then, but then skip the ones that you don't know immediately and come back to them later, because you can see I was able to get all but one word, and now it's going to be much easier to figure out this missing word because I got all the other words and all the other sentences. All right. So for this one, it may involve travel to a particular region, such as a rainforest, for research or study. Right. So once I got those other words, then the word I didn't get the first time, research, became clear, especially once I got study, because research and study are so closely related.
When he stood up, he realized that his leg had fallen asleep.
Okay, when he stood up, comma, like I said before, punctuation is very important for listen and type, especially commas. They're mostly the statements that you get will be one sentence, so you won't have to worry about multiple periods, but you should worry about commas. So you know that a comma goes where when you take a pause. So let's listen again.
When he stood up, he realized that his leg had fallen asleep.
He realized that his leg had fallen asleep, and you should have heard this pause here. Okay, I should have heard that pause there. All right, let's proofread this response.
When he stood up, he realized that his leg had fallen asleep.
Okay, that seems correct. All right, you can read these and prepare your answer. You only have 20 seconds, so be mindful of that, because a long one like this, you'll need at least 10 seconds, so I'm going to have to speak fast. Authentic learning is an approach that emphasizes the application of knowledge and skills in real-world contexts.
Contrary to our expectation, the teams were quite evenly matched.
Contrary to our expectation, the teams were evenly matched. So note that comma again. Here, he takes a pause after expectation. And what I'm going to pay attention to is this word. In English, we typically say expectations, plural, but I think he says the singular, expectation, which is still grammatically correct, just unusual. So that's what I'm going to listen for.
Contrary to our expectation, the teams were quite evenly matched.
Okay, contrary to our expectation, he says. So no plural. And then let's use the final listen to see if I got everything else correct.
Contrary to our expectation, the teams were quite evenly matched.
And I'm missing the word quite here. The teams were quite evenly matched. All right, this one's a little shorter, so I can spend a little bit more time making sure I can pronounce each word. And now I'm going to read this nice and slow. I've been working on my application and trying to make it as strong as possible.
Psychology teaches us that our behavior influences our beliefs.
Psychology teaches us that our behavior influences our beliefs. Wow. All right. So psychology, tough word to spell, but I think that that's correct. So I'm just going to use the second listen to check.
Psychology teaches us that our behavior influences our beliefs.
All right. So I was able to use the second listen to proofread my response. I don't need the third listen, really. However, on the DET, you don't get any points for going faster. So I'm not going to gain points by only using 2 listens and going to the next question. So I can do that if I want, but I can also just take a breath or be very sure.
Psychology teaches us that our behavior influences our beliefs.
And use the third listen to double check my answer. All right, this one is a little bit longer, so I'm going to start the recording. This dynamic behavior of chemical equilibrium has numerous practical applications.
We've ascertained the truth.
We've ascertained? Oh boy, I haven't ascertained the truth. I can't remember how to spell this word, unfortunately. Ascertain means acquired. So if you know the correct spelling of ascertained, go ahead and put it in a comment. Why not? Let us know what the correct spelling is. The other thing to be mindful of here for listen and type is Duolingo likes to include contractions. So listen to it again.
We've ascertained the truth.
We've ascertained the truth. He doesn't say we have, he says we've, which is the contraction. This is confusing because when you're writing academic English, you don't want to use contractions. So even though the DET is a test of academic English, they use contractions in listen and type. So don't be afraid to type them in your answer. All right, here we have a read and complete question. So let's go ahead and read the title. William Herschel's theory of stars. In 1785, William Herschel theorized about the life cycle of stars, in which a star would exist for a limited amount of time before exploding in a dramatic event called a supernova. Let's read the final sentence. Herschel's theory was confirmed with the discovery of nebulae and the recognition that stars formed from within these interstellar dust clouds. All right, I want you to try to get this one. And I will get a few, and then I'll leave a few for you to get. All right, so I'm going to leave this first one blank. He blank suggested that afterwards blank would collapse into a ball of blank from which new stars would blank. All right, so I want you to try to get this one. He blank suggested that afterwards blank would collapse into a ball of blank from which new stars would blank. All right, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4 blanks to get. Again, I will put the ones that I don't answer that I would like you to try to answer in the description so you can refer to those later. You don't need to write down the entire passage here. So use the remaining time here to see if you can get this one correct.
They liked swimming.
They liked swimming. I think he says liked, but he may say like, so this is what I'm going to pay attention to on the second listen.
They liked swimming.
They liked swimming. Past tense, liked. The other thing is he says this, and he's very excited when he says this. He's very happy when he says this, which means that we probably should use an exclamation point. This is not so important. If you put a period here, You're not going to lose a lot of points, maybe no points. You can still get a perfect score if you have a period, I'm sure. But if it's clear that he's saying this in a very excited way, then why not put the exclamation point?
They liked swimming.
And you get to meet so many new people from all over the world.
We later realized that the window had been open the whole time.
We later realized that the window had been open the whole time. All right, I think this is correct, so I'm going to use the second listen to proofread.
We later realized that the window had been open the whole time.
We later realized that the window had been open the whole time. Okay, let's just use the final listen.
We later realized that the window had been open the whole time.
Cool, that's correct. All right, uninformed jury members preferred. The first sentence is, in jury selection, lawyers are now beginning to favor individuals who are uninformed about the topic of the case. Final sentence, people who are uninformed, by contrast, will apparently come in with more flexible viewpoints. So uninformed, means not, informed means to have information, to be knowledgeable about a topic. So uninformed means not knowledgeable about a topic. So that's useful context that we want to have clear in our minds before we start filling in the incomplete words. So the passage goes, the blank is that individuals who come in with experience in a topic. All right. Experience doesn't fit. So I'm not sure what this one could be. We're going to come back to it. With blank in a topic will also have strong opinions. This prior knowledge supposedly affects their ability to be impartial. All right, so there were two that I didn't get the first time. So the first is, the blank is that individuals who come in with blank in a topic will also have strong opinions. This one is logic, okay, the logic. That means the thinking behind something, the reason behind something, the logic behind something. Is that individuals who come in with, I wanted to say experience in a topic. However, the correct answer I can see now is expertise. And this actually makes more sense than experience because we don't really have experience in a topic. A topic isn't something that we do. And experience refers to experience doing something. Expertise refers to knowledge. So we have knowledge about a topic. We have information about a topic. And expertise refers to knowledge and information. So it's a more appropriate word. I say that because those types of things, when you recognize them, can make you more confident in your answer. So it's always best to save time to proofread your responses to read incomplete questions. I ran out of time here, but anytime you're typing on the test, save time to proofread. Over time, the two pilots started working together as partners instead of competitors.
I'd be willing to pay.
I'm going to leave this one blank and allow you to respond. So here is the second listen.
I'd be willing to pay.
Okay, it's quick. I'll give you a hint. There's a contraction in there. Okay. So I will play it here in 10 seconds. All right, here is the final listen. Ready?
I'd be willing to pay.
Okay. That's it for this one. I'm just going to type something in here. I am. And so we can move to the next question. All right, we're now done with that section. We're going to move on to interactive reading. So here we're given a passage that we're going to work with. The main thing to know for interactive reading, and by the way, I have an entire masterclass on this, which I will link to up here as well as down in the description, is that you have one timer for all 6 questions. So you'll always have the same questions in the same order in interactive reading, and you'll have one timer for all of those questions. So it's important that you pace yourself. If you go too slowly on the first questions, you won't have time for the later questions. And if you don't answer them, then you get 0 points. All right. So you need to pace yourself. So generally speaking, right, about 1 minute per question. But this first one, don't be afraid to take 2 minutes, maybe even a little bit more. I think it's the hardest question of all of them. So we're simply going to identify the missing words. It's a multiple choice question because we're given options for each of the blanks. So the best thing to do, though, is read the whole passage. Even though there's a lot of blanks, read the whole passage because you need that context. Unfortunately, you're not given a title. In fact, you're going to have to pick a title for another question. So you're not given a title, and the first and last sentences won't necessarily be complete. In this example, the first sentence is complete. It's not always the case, so that makes it a little more difficult than reading complete. But in any case, read the whole passage. So, a supernova is a large explosion in which a star collapses and explodes. The explosion is blank, big, that it can be seen from across the universe. A supernova is a one-time event in which a star explodes and stops blank star. Scientists don't know why the star explodes and causes the supernova, but they blank. It has something blank with a blank becoming a blank dwarf. Okay, so the first one, the explosion is so big that it can be seen from across the universe. A supernova is a one-time event in which a star explodes and stops being a star. Scientists don't know why the star explodes and causes the supernova, but they think, right? They believe. They think it has something to do with. On the DET, especially for these first questions, when you have to identify the missing word, Duolingo likes to use expressions or idioms. So the phrase, "it has something to do with," is an idiom in English. So that's what you're being tested here on. Are you familiar with this phrase? Have you seen this phrase? It has something to do with a blank becoming, well, a star becoming a large, full star, null, white dwarf. So this one is, to be honest, I think a little too difficult because white dwarf is very specific to astronomy. So if you're a student of astronomy or you like astronomy, you've probably heard about a white dwarf. But if you've never studied astronomy, which I haven't studied astronomy, I just have maybe seen this mentioned in some article, it's going to be much harder to get this question. So usually on the DET, the questions that you're asked, they won't require super specific vocabulary like this. However, as you can see, sometimes you will be expected to know a term like a white dwarf. All right, so once you fill in the missing words, then you will be given a new part of the passage, and you have to find the correct sentence that links the old part with the new part. So what I would recommend is, as you're going, you should reread this entire first passage to make sure that, one, you have the correct answers, but two, so that you fully understand the passage. It's going to be very important for all the future questions. If you answered something wrong, you may have an incorrect understanding of the passage as a whole, which means your chances of getting the next questions incorrect are higher. All right, so avoid that. Read the passage. Again, make sure you have the correct answer. I'm going to skip that because I know that my answers were correct. And I want to use all the time for the other questions as well. All right, so the new part is, when a white dwarf gets small enough, it causes a supernova. All right, so the first passage ends by talking about a star becoming a white dwarf. This new part is talking about how when a white dwarf gets small enough, it causes a supernova. So I think I need something about a white dwarf. So there are only a few times when a star is destroyed in a matter of seconds. This is a nice thing that the DET allows, is you can hover over an option and it will put it in there so that you can read it in context. In this case, though, this doesn't talk about a white dwarf, so I don't think this one is correct. On a clear night, a new star can be seen in the sky. Again, not talking about white dwarfs here. The explosion makes the star brighter than it could ever be before. We're not talking about white dwarfs with this option either. And then this one. A white dwarf is a star that shrinks down to the size of a small planet. All right, so this one is talking about the white dwarf. I think it's correct, but let's just be sure by reading it in context. So scientists don't know why the star explodes and causes the supernova, but they think it has something to do with a star becoming a white dwarf. A white dwarf is a star that shrinks down to the size of a small planet. When a white dwarf gets small enough, it causes a supernova. That makes perfect sense. This is the correct answer. All right, I'm going to move a little faster to make sure we can get through the rest of these questions. So where can a supernova be seen? I need to highlight the answer. And the answer is here. It can be seen from across the universe. What happens when a supernova occurs? In a supernova, a star explodes and stops becoming a star. All right, select the idea that is expressed in the passage. In this one, read through the options and eliminate the ones that aren't correct and identify the one that is correct. All right, so this is the only idea that was expressed in the passage. And then finally, you'll be asked to identify the best title for the passage. So the emotion inside a star, no. Connect the stars, no. The mystery of supernovas, yes. The opulent new star, no. All right, so the mystery of supernovas is really the only one that captures what the passage was about. It was all about supernovas. All right, next we go to interactive listening. So it will always start with this scenario. So you're going to read the scenario and then you're going to enter a conversation with the other person. And you will listen to what they say and then you have to select the best response. All right, so this scenario, when you're reading it, it's important to pick up on important details like who you're talking to, why you're talking to them. The scenarios will always be in an academic setting. So you'll usually be given information about who the professor is, what they teach, what you're studying for, what you need help with, stuff like that. All right, so you are a student in an international relations course. All right, so you're studying international relations. You don't quite understand the role and functions of global policy making systems. All right, so that's what you need help with. That's what you have questions about. So you decide to ask your professor during one of their review sessions. All right, so you are at a review session. You're asking a professor for help about the role and functions of global policy making systems in your international relations course. So a lot of details there. that are very important to keep in mind. All right, the other thing to note, you only have one timer for 5 questions. So I'm going to need to move pretty fast here to make sure I get through all these questions. All right, so let's see. All right, so the correct answer here would be this. All right, I only arrived at this correct answer because I was able to eliminate all the other ones, right? So this one, about a research project, no. About German class, no. About performance in the class, no. About what class you should take next semester, no. So the only answer that makes sense is this one. All right, and then here's what the professor says.
Of course. What can I help you with?
Okay, of course, what can I help you with? All right, I'm not sure I fully understood the concept of monetary policy, concept of public service, concept of rhetoric, concept of global policy making systems. Okay, there we go. All right, so again, this detail, concept of global policy making systems, was the key detail, and we needed to have picked up on the scenario, on the details in the scenario to get that correct. If you don't remember this scenario, here's a trick. Scroll to the top. You can reread the entire conversation, including the scenario, at any time.
Sure, let me see if I can explain it a little better. Global policy-making systems are a type of system that help make decisions at the international level. It usually involves representatives from different countries coming together to discuss issues and make decisions.
Okay.
Yes, that's right. They usually deal with topics like trade agreements, environmental regulations, and so on. No, not all countries have to agree. But usually a majority of countries need to be in favor of the decision for it to be made.
All right. There we go. So I had to move fast at the end there, but I hope you understood the process that I used to get the correct answer. Have a bit of time. It's always a good idea to save, I would say at a minimum 20 seconds to do the following. Scroll to the top of the conversation like I just did and reread the whole thing, because the next question is going to be 75 seconds for you to write a summary of the conversation. All right, so you need to get all those important details about what you talked about fresh in your mind. That way you have all the information you need to summarize the conversation effectively. All right. In this conversation, I spoke with my professor at a review session, and I'm going to add international relations professor, okay? International relations professor at a review session about global policy making systems. Okay. I think it was systems, maybe it was processes. This would be, I wish I could go back and read the conversation, but unfortunately you're not allowed to do that. So that's why it's important to reread the conversation, pick up on those details. She explained that these systems make decisions about things like trade and the environment. She also explained that not every country has to agree, just a majority. All right, so for writing questions, you should always save time to proofread your response. I didn't do that here, which means that I may lose some points. So you can see here that Duolingo is telling me, make sure I'm always focused on the screen. I've had students ask, but I was focused on the screen. Duolingo always puts this. I haven't looked at the screen the whole time. I've been looking at you on the camera. Okay, but that's not why Duolingo is showing me that. So if you see that while you're doing the practice test, that doesn't mean you weren't looking at the screen. Duolingo shows that to everybody. Okay, we now have 2 writing questions. First one is picture description. Only 1 minute. You need to move very fast, so I'm not going to waste any time on this one. This image shows a massive stadium full of fans. This stadium is actually called the Big House, and it is for the University of Michigan. It appears that it is a football game because I can see a football player on the Megatron, the very large screen, at the far end of the stadium. We have a ton of videos to help you with picture description, lots of strategies, vocabulary, so I'll link to those in the description as well. All right, then we need to write about the following topic. Interactive writing, you have part A, part B, 5 minutes for part A, 3 minutes for part B. You're given 30 seconds to prepare your response. So, festivals and fairs often take place in cities and towns around the world. Is there such a festival or fair that you have attended in the past or heard about? Describe your experience and what you enjoyed about it. All right, so what I recommend for these writing questions is have your plan and then start writing. So ideally, you come up with your opinion, your main points during those initial 30 seconds. Even if you need more time, it's okay. Take the time now to identify your main points. That way, while you're writing, you can just focus on vocabulary, grammar, etc., instead of having to really think about what you're going to talk about. So in this case, this is a describe prompt, which means I just need to share information about some topic. These are generally easier than other kinds of prompts, as I explain in other videos. In this case, I'm going to talk about the Huntington County Fair. And I need to describe my experience and what I enjoyed about it. All right, so I'm specifically asked to talk about what I enjoyed about the experience. So the Huntington County Fair is the fair in the town where I grew up. I went every summer. It was the most exciting thing that happened all year in my town. And so the things I enjoyed about it were 1, the rides and games, 2, getting to see kids from other towns, and 3, the demolition derby. Okay, so you can see I've used up a lot of time preparing my response. You shouldn't use this much time, but I wanted to explain the strategy. So let me go ahead and respond to this one. So a fair that I have attended many times is the Huntington County Fair. It is the biggest annual event in my hometown, bringing together thousands of people from around the county. The thing I enjoyed the most about the county fair were all of the rides and games. We were able to enjoy amusement rides like the Tilt-A-Whirl and the Ferris wheel, which we normally could not enjoy. There were also fun carnival games where we could win prizes. Ideally, I would put the names of some of these games, but at this point, I can't remember what they're called. It's been so many years. Another thing I enjoyed was seeing kids from other towns. My town was very small, so I saw the same people day after day. Therefore, it was exciting to see new faces at the fair. Finally, the biggest event, which was always a ton of fun, was the demolition derby. People would take old cars, drive them into one another, and the last car that could still move was the winner. This was highly entertaining, and I always went with my friends. All right. By the way, the Demolition Derby, this is a real thing. You can search for it on YouTube. It's popular in the U.S., at least in some places, like where I grew up. I don't know if you do it elsewhere in the world. All right, so this would be my response. People often ask, what should I put for a conclusion? My answer is you probably don't need a conclusion. It's better to save time to proofread your response. It's much more important to think about having paragraphs like mine where I talk about one thing in each paragraph. So you can see each of my paragraphs here. I introduce the county fair. I talk about the thing I enjoyed the most, another thing I enjoyed, a third thing I enjoyed, and then, as I keep saying, save time to proofread your response. Then, in part B, we will be given a follow-up topic or prompt. This prompt will be related to the first prompt, and typically what it does is it asks us to zoom in, focus on a particular aspect of the topic. So we were asked about festivals and fairs in general and what we enjoy about them. Now in part B, we're being asked, what about the exposure to the cultural diversity that we encountered at the fair, and how did that benefit us? How did we enjoy that cultural diversity? All right, so let's see. Write about any cultural diversity you might encounter at the festival or fair. All right, so for me, although I grew up in Huntington, my parents are not from there. So culturally, I was not ever fully a product of Huntington. However, the county fair was the biggest cultural event in the county, which means that it was the biggest demonstration of the culture of where I grew up. Most notably, the county fair was a massive agricultural event. People came to buy and sell livestock like cows, pigs, sheep, and goats. I did not grow up on a farm, so seeing farmers and people who lived off the land was very interesting for me. It made me appreciate how hard these people work and how much they care for the animals that they raise. Their example inspired me to also approach my own work with the same level of diligence. Okay, cool. So let me just proofread in the remaining time, see if I can find any typos. Although I grew up in Huntington, my parents are not from there, so I culturally was not ever fully a product of Huntington. However, the county fair is the biggest cultural event in the county, which means that it was the biggest demonstration of the culture where I grew up. Okay, there we go. All right, so we now have this speaking section. We're going to have 3 speaking questions, 20 seconds to prepare, 90 seconds to respond. Same thing, I want to identify those main points in the first 20 seconds. Sorry. All right, you can listen to the prompt 2 more times. So I won't talk so you can hear the prompt.
Talk about a major achievement in your life.
Okay, and once more.
Talk about a major achievement in your life.
All right, talk about a major achievement in my life. So at a minimum, I want to identify the major achievement. A major achievement in my life is actually creating Arno. Before I created Arno, I was an employee at other companies where I had a good job and I think I was a good employee, but I didn't have much of an impact on the world. However, with Arno, my co-founder Makoto and I have been able to create something that previously didn't exist. And we've been able to help students around the world get ready for the Duolingo English Test, to get a great score, to gain admission into universities in places like the US, Canada, UK, and Europe, and hopefully perhaps even get some scholarships to help them pay for it. This, to me, is something I'm very proud of because it means that all the work that we do and all of the scholarships that I received in my own life, in my educational journey, I can now return the favor to help other people also get great educations and hopefully then enable them to become empowered to do things that make the world a better place. All right, speak about the photo. Prepare to speak about the image below. So for speak about the photo, you do have 20 seconds to prepare, unlike write about the photo when you have to launch right in. So take the time to study the image. This image depicts 2 people who appear to be a couple because the man is touching the woman. The woman seems a bit scared, perhaps. So I hope that they're a couple and that they know each other and that this man isn't causing this woman some trouble. To be honest, this scene makes me a little worried for the woman because it seems late at night. I don't see other people around. The man is very large and very close to the woman, who seems to be able to overpower her. Perhaps they are coming out of a club or something like that, so alcohol, maybe drugs, are involved, which is always a cause for worry. The woman is wearing a tight white tank top, and she has a red bra strap, and a purse, I think, is dangling from her arm. The man is wearing a collared shirt and a nice watch. This is another indication to me that they are out clubbing. And in the background, although it's blurry, we can see the other side of a street, and I think the blurred lights of a passing car. Now we will speak about this topic. So talk about a person you know and respect. Who is this person? Why do you respect them? How could you show your appreciation for this person? A person that I know and respect would be my mother. So I respect my mother because she was always a wonderful mother to me. She always took care of me, looked after me. She always made sure that I ate well, that I always had activities. She always expected me to work hard and do well in school and be kind to others, which instilled in me the right work ethic and values that have helped me to become successful in my life and lead a happy life. At the same time, my mother has built a successful career herself. My mother has always worked full-time. from the time that I was little. So she somehow managed to be very successful and in her career and to be a very good mother to me, which I think is very difficult to do. So I have a lot of admiration for her. As I've gotten older, I've tried to be better about showing my appreciation for her. So telling her thank you more often, calling her more often, taking advantage of occasions like her birthday or Mother's Day to get her a present or take her out to dinner or do something kind for her. And we're in the final section. We now have the writing and speaking sample. This is how the test will always end, with these two questions. All right, so for the writing sample, we have 5 minutes to write, 30 seconds to prepare your response. It's identical to part A of interactive writing. So this prompt is: many schools teach students about historical events as part of the curriculum. Do you think that learning about a country's history should be a requirement in all schools? Support your opinion using specific examples. All right, so this is an argue prompt, which means I need to state my opinion and then justify it. So for these, I recommend you begin by stating your opinion clearly. This is another question students always have. What is a good introduction? I don't think an introduction is needed. I've never used an introduction, and I've gotten a perfect score on the DET twice, so it's clearly not required. So I always start like this. I believe that learning about your country's history should be a requirement in all schools. And now I'm going to have 2, ideally 3 paragraphs if I have time, that provide my specific reasons for why I hold this opinion. And that's it. All right, so firstly, it is important to understand a nation's past in order to understand the values that underpin it. For example, so we're asked to provide specific examples. So in general, it's good to provide examples, but definitely for this question. For example, the United States has a long history of racism, dating back to almost the very beginning of the nation, when slaves were brought from Africa. However, our Constitution says that all people should be free. This is a clear contradiction. And because so many Americans were aware of this contradiction, we were able to defeat slavery, and we can continue to combat racism today. If we weren't aware of the contents of the Constitution, there would be less force behind the movement to eliminate racial injustice. All right, first paragraph. Second, knowing the history of our country helps us to understand how we got to the present. Okay? By understanding the journey we have been on, we can make more sense of where we are now. And an example is, for example, America has always been a nation of immigrants. This is what has made our country strong. By understanding that important aspect of our history, we can have better immigration policies now so that we can continue to keep America strong. Okay. And the thirdly, historical events can teach us what to avoid. For example, we had a terrible civil war in the United States. If we are knowledgeable about that period in our past, we will be more willing to find compromise and avoid conflict in this country. All right, so I should have saved more time to proofread my response. But like I said on the DET, you're allowed to have some typos. So I think I'll still score very highly, but save around a minute to proofread your response. All right, prepare to speak about the topic below. When was the last time you went somewhere that was new, exciting, or different for you to experience? Where was it? How did you get there? And what was that experience like? All right, so I'm going to plan my response. I went to Oaxaca. I'll explain where it was. In my second paragraph, I'll explain how I got there. And then in my third paragraph, I'll explain what the experience was like. The last time that I went somewhere new, exciting, or different was actually last week when I went to Oaxaca in Mexico for about 5 days. So I've been living in Mexico for several months, but I live in another place, another town with a different culture. Oaxaca is quite far away. So I had to take a bus from my town, Tulum, to the airport in Cancun, take a 2-hour flight over to Oaxaca. And Oaxaca is different from Tulum because Oaxaca is very historical. So Oaxaca was a colonial town. So the architecture is very old, but very charming. And the buildings are much more colorful. So here in Tulum, everything's sort of concrete and tan or white, very plain. But in Oaxaca, they like to use colorful paint for the buildings, orange and blue and yellow and green. Each building is different. And Oaxaca is a real cultural center in Mexico. So there's a lot of great art, many artisans that make jewelry, rugs, clothing, as well as many designers. And because there's so many artists, there's a lot of public art or murals all through the city. So there's just a lot of vibrant, colorful things to look at and enjoy. On top of that, Oaxaca has maybe the best food in Mexico. That's what people say. So it's a pretty small city, but it has so many amazing restaurants because people from around the world, not just Mexico, but around the world, travel to Oaxaca to enjoy the food. And Oaxaca is widely considered to be the best place to taste famous dishes like mole, which is a very Mexican dish. I don't know if it's officially the dish of Mexico, but is certainly unofficially one of the official dishes. And they have food of all kinds, though, including a lot of good seafood because they're not very far from the ocean. The other thing in Oaxaca that was different from Tulum is the climate. So Oaxaca is in the mountains, and it's in a big valley. And so clouds can get trapped over the town. So it was very rainy. So the weather was not as good as here in Tulum, more cloudy, more rainy, but it was also more cool. So it was more pleasant to walk around during the day. All right, that is the final response. So answer is going to be submitted. And okay, got 145 to 155. It's about what I was expecting because I left questions blank so that I could get different questions again. So I hope you found that helpful. So please comment with your answers to the questions that I didn't answer. And also let me know what I should do in future videos. So I want to make sure the videos I spend time making are the most useful to you. So let me know what you want me to cover. All right, that's all for today. I'll see you in a future video. Bye now.